Okay guys, Troy Francis here. I wanted to touch on a very important topic which seems for some reason to have been getting quite a lot of attention recently online, and that is date nights in relationships. Okay, so there's been a number of people online, on Twitter in particular, or X, sorry, arguing that date nights are a really fantastic idea, a really amazing way to spark up your relationship, I suppose, to keep that loving feeling alive in a marriage or a long-term relationship. Now, I've noticed that Pearl has been dealing with quite a few of these people and debunking them or pushing back on them, and I would have to agree. I've always thought that the idea of doing date nights is a little bit cliched, it seems a bit inauthentic, and I don't believe it is effective, and here's why. Firstly, if you're in a long-term cohabiting relationship, so say you guys are married, or even if you're just boyfriend and girlfriend and you're sharing a house, then the reality is you're spending most of your time together anyway. Now, I had an experience some years ago when I was with a girl, this American girl. I ended up living with her. This was about a decade ago. And she was very, very keen, very, very quickly on, firstly on us living together in the first place, which was not my idea. It was just something that kind of happened through various circumstances at the time. But anyway, she moved in for a period of time, and she was very keen on this idea of what she called quality time, okay? And what I think is kind of the meaning behind these date nights, you know, it's like, oh, we've got to spend like quality time together. But the reality is, what does quality time really mean? I mean, you're spending most of your time together anyway, or certainly a big proportion of your time together, because you moved in together. That's the fucking nature of it. And yes, I understand, of course, there's a qualitative difference between spending time doing the washing up or going to IKEA and watching a nice movie together or going out for a nice meal or something like that. I get it. I get there are better experiences that you can have together and less optimal experiences you can have together. I understand that, but it seems redundant if you're in a close relationship to have to then additionally and somewhat artificially carve out extra time for that person when that's the person that probably you're seeing more than anybody else anyway, if that makes sense. So there's that. Because in choosing to move in with the person, and I think this is generally what we're talking about when we're talking about date nights, because if you are not living together, then a date night is just a date, right? I mean, it's not, it kind of loses its meaning, doesn't it? So let's assume that we're talking about people who are living together or married. You've signed up already, not for date night, you've signed up for date life. You know, you signed up for, I am now going to spend a majority of my time with this person. So you've already made a huge concession, or rather, let's not say concession, maybe that's a bit negative. You've already made a huge stride in the direction of, right, you and me, we're together, this is it, kind of thing. So then to sort of have to, and the other thing that gets me, it's like the organized fun thing, isn't it? It's like Christmas parties when everyone in the office has to go to this Christmas party they don't really want to go to, and they've got to pretend to have a really great time, even if they kind of aren't really, or they'd rather be doing something else, you know? And it's a little bit like that with date nights. It feels a little bit contrived. It feels a little bit like, oh, we've got to make this special effort because why? Okay, and even the very act of doing a date night or organizing a date night sort of implies that there's something rotten in the state of Denmark. Hamlet quote, guys. There's something kind of going a little bit wrong here, okay? Because otherwise, why would you need to do the date night? I mean, in my view, the relationship should be vibrant and vital enough and exciting enough in itself that every night is a date night. And even if you guys are doing the washing up together, or you've got to clean the house together or whatever, that's still fun because you guys are together. It shouldn't have to be this thing of like, oh, well, you know, I don't know what people do, you know, we'll get this special food or we'll do this special activity to try and make it something more than it is. Because the very point of this should be that you guys are together, and that's enough. Surely, you know, surely that's what it's meant to be, unless I'm missing something. So it feels a bit contrived, it feels a bit inauthentic, and fundamentally, I don't think it works because, and look, I mean, full transparency here, I'm not married, I've never been married, what do I know? You know, I'm not living with a woman, I've certainly lived with women in the past, and I've been in long-term relationships, so I do have some experience about this from that point of view, but it seems to me, from observing this phenomenon in the culture, that date nights tend to happen sort of at the tail end of things when the desire has died off in the relationship anyway, okay? It's one of those things that people start to do to try to turn the ship back round when it's going off course, if that makes sense. You know, it's like, oh shit, you know, like the spark's kind of gone, the magic's not there anymore, not really feeling that same buzz, that same vibe as we used to back in the day. What can we do to try and bring the magic back? I know, let's do a date night. And it's this thing, this sort of initiative, this project that almost gets suggested by a counselor or a relationship guru or something like that. And so the couple implement this thing, but it's like sticking a sticking plaster over the wound. You know what I mean? It's like it's not going to solve the underlying problem, because the underlying problem in many cases is that the genuine desire has drained out of the relationship, probably on the woman's side. I mean, look, obviously these things vary, but probably for the most part on the woman's side. You know, the woman just isn't feeling it in the way that she once was, okay? And ladies out there, this is something for you, because what will often happen, unfortunately, and I've talked about this previously in videos, is that women will often push for the formalization of relationships and bringing the relationship close together and making the relationship into something domesticated. You know, I mean, women are really often the ones who are going to push for living together and making it much more, right, okay, what are we, making it monogamous, making it this tied down thing. Fine. That's great, but then when the guy submits, when the guy goes along with that, it's like, okay, fine, I get it, we're going to be together, let's live together, let's make this formal, let's make this official. The guy goes along with it, and then the woman starts getting bored, because then she's like, well, you know, it's just not the same, it's not as exciting as it once was. Now I see him every morning, I see his dirty laundry in the corner of the room, I see that, you know, he leaves the bathroom in a mess, he leaves the cap off the toothpaste, and he doesn't do the washing up, or he leaves the plates, he doesn't put them in the dishwasher properly, or, you know, all of this crap that gets brought into it. And, you know, whatever the things were that attracted her to him in the first place, he was this wild, free, alpha male, warrior kind of figure. You know, when he's sitting watching Songs of Praise on a Sunday with the finished, pizza boxes in front of him, and he's sort of falling asleep and snoring, he's less of a attractive proposition than he was perhaps. Not only that, but of course cohabitation also reduces testosterone in men, okay, as does, by the way, having kids, but that's another thing. Okay, so domestication, men are not meant to be domesticated creatures, okay? They're meant to be out there in the wild. They're meant to be going out there and conquering, right? And so when the woman effectively conquers the guy and gets him to settle down and gets him to, you know, become this domesticated animal successfully, then that's great for a bit from her sense of security and her sense of having won him, you know, brilliant. But then is that really, really what she wanted? Because then it's like, well, you know, I mean, it's kind of a bit dull now, isn't it? It's kind of a bit boring. And so often then the woman's visceral desire for that guy will start to reduce. And the guys for the woman as well, by the way. This does go both ways, because, you know, the sex is great and sex is very exciting when you first met and when you maybe know each other a bit, but you don't know each other very well. You're not spending all your time together. When you're spending all of your time with that same person, it can start to get a little bit samey. It can start to get a little bit predictable. It can start to get a little bit less exciting. Okay, so when that sexual energy starts to dip and starts to decline, then on both sides, that's the point at which the energy starts to go out of the thing, and it's at that point that somebody thinks, I know, I've got a great idea, let's do a date night. All right, and as I say, the date night, it's a lovely idea, you know, I get it, it's very nice, it sounds good on paper, but it's not going to address that underlying rift, because nothing really can address that underlying, aside from probably the only thing, if the sexual desire really has, you know, seeped out of the relationship and it's dissipating, probably the only way actually to reignite that is a healthy dose of jealousy. Okay, so basically if you guys split up or you have a massive argument and one of you moves out for the weekend, then comes back, and then you get that amazing, that's why that makeup sex is so good, because there was that fear of loss that's been instilled into both of you, and then it's like this reclaiming of like, oh my god, you know, and it's so passionate and amazing. But it's very, very hard to inject that passion and that excitement back into any sort of coupling unless there's some sort of threat of loss. And obviously, in a cohabitational situation, cohabitating setup, fear of loss is massively, massively pushed down, because you're living together. You've already, you know, the guy has already given in to the woman's sexual strategy, which is, you know, to find a dude to shack up with, basically. The guy's already given into that, and she knows where he is all the time. You know, he's there every night. He's not likely, or it's much less easy for him to stray than maybe it would have been before. So her sexual anxiety, her competition competition anxiety of this thing, you know, the thinking of like, oh, well, maybe some other woman could get him, you know, is massively, massively reduced, if not eradicated entirely. And along with that, her desire is also reduced. So just simply doing a date night is not going to fix that. You know what I'm saying? Like getting some canapes or whatever you guys do, getting a nice Marks and Spencer's meal in front of the TV and watching the box set of The Crown and then giving each other a massage is not going to fix that underlying problem. It really isn't. I suppose the only other variation on this theme is if there are children involved, and then giving the children to a babysitter and then you guys going out and spending some time. And I guess, you know, there's some value in that perhaps. But again, the date night, while it can be fun, while it can be very, very nice, it seems to me to be, I suppose the best analogy is the one I used before, a sticking plaster to put over something that's likely to be much more serious. It might be if you've got kids and you're just overworked and you're busy the whole time, then yeah, for sure, you know, going out with each other, you know, once a week, once a fortnight is a cool thing to do, and that's great. But I don't think we should be under any illusion that it is in itself the sole thing that's going to save any relationship, because it really isn't. I mean, relationships for the most part, in my view, break down because of boredom, really, and because of sameness, and they're allowed to do that now because we have no societal controls in place, right? I mean, marriage doesn't mean very much anymore in the sense, I mean, it means something in the legal sense, but in terms of getting out of it, it's fairly easy to get out of it now with no full divorce, right? You know, somebody gets fed up, they get bored, they could just say, well, yeah, kind of not happy, not feeling it anymore, and they can get out of that partnership fairly easily. There's no social censure about that. In fact, it's actively encouraged, really, particularly for women to leave partnerships that they're not happy in. That's actually celebrated in the culture for the most part. And there's certainly no religious censure, or you know, in most of the general society, certainly in the UK, maybe a bit more in the US, there's not really any religious sort of consequences to this either. So marriage, easy to get into, pretty easy to get out of, right? It's kind of easy come, easy go. So yeah, you know, it's and then, so there isn't really this kind of, there are no controls in play that are keeping people in relationships. Now, I'm not saying that's necessarily a bad thing, because we don't want people to be stuck in relationships where they're miserable, okay? But, you know, the reality is that we're now in a situation where relationships feel very transient. You know, it all feels very transient. And because we're on our phones all the time, and we're looking at other people and we're looking at what they're doing in their beautiful, amazing lives, it's all a bit like, well, you know, I'm not happy. Don't I deserve more than this? And women in particular, I deserve more. I deserve my dream life. I only get one life, right? I deserve to go out and create that happiness for myself, even if that means leaving my husband and my family to do so. Okay, so that's what we're up against culturally. It is the fragmentation of long-term monogamous relationships, okay? It is a dying art. Serial monogamy, if anything, is probably going to become more prevalent in society over the next, you know, generation than what's gone before, okay? Probably. But certainly, date nights are not potent enough. They are not going to be the force that is going to pull all this together, I'm afraid. So, you know, have fun, do what you need to do, but don't think that it's a magic wand, because it really isn't. Anyway, with that being said, thank you very much for watching the video. Please do subscribe to this channel. Leave me a comment below to help to boost the algorithm. Give me a like, etc. And I'll see you guys again very soon. Bye-bye.